Hi, welcome to Chad Silversmithing. Before we get too far in, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps out my channel a great deal. I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment. Well, we're getting close to Valentine's Day, so I thought it might be time to do a Valentine's project. I've made one of these a long time ago that came out pretty nice, so I thought I'd do kind of a stylized heart ring with a little round ruby. It's maybe 4.5 millimeter ruby. And it's a natural ruby, it's not a synthetic this time. So I hope you like it. Before we get started though, I wanted to thank some groups. My patrons over on Patreon. You are a fantastic group and I really appreciate all of the cool things that you show me that you've made. It's a really nice place with a ton of knowledge and a whole bunch of really nice people. So thanks for being that way, you guys. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 9,000, which is awesome. I'm amazed by that, and I really appreciate all of the kind comments and the financial support you've given me through buying me a coffee or the super thanks feature. Buying me a coffee, I get a bigger percentage of it. If you're going to do that, that's probably a little bit better way to do it. But either way, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That helps with supplies. All right, so let's get started on this project. So let's see what I drew up in my little book. This is one of my design idea books. There's 3 different cover designs, but I find that it helps me to kind of solidify the ideas I want to do in my mind, and also to help me to get some kind of templates laid out for measuring things. In addition to keeping me kind of symmetrical with the little grid in the background, which I'm not too good at normally. So I'm going to do a little stylized ring. This is kind of a crude drawing of it. This is a little bit more what it's going to look like. I'm going to use 12 gauge square. There's, like I said, there's about a 4.5 to 4.75 millimeter little ruby right here. It's kind of a pretty little ruby. It's kind of on the pink side. And I think that'll make a nice centerpiece for that right there. This ended up being about 14.5 centimeters long when I measured it out, or 5.5 inches. And I think this is going to be a pretty simple project. It's a long time since I made one of these, but I don't recall it being super hard. We're just basically going to make this shape with this long extension sticking out, and we'll wrap that around and make it to the size that we want, cut it off, and solder that right in the crook of the heart so it creates a ring. And then we'll solder the bezel end. And I think we'll start by making the bezel. I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel, which equates to about 4.76 millimeters tall. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter. I just keep that stuff around so I can cut it to the size that I want. It just kind of prevents me having to have 8 different kinds of bezel. So 12 gauge square, like I said. I'll probably taper the end a little bit there so where it curls around. And I'm going to file a notch right here so that I can get a little bit sharper bend, and then we'll solder the notch closed. So, but first let's make our bezel. Hope everybody's having a nice late winter, early spring. I don't know if it's early spring yet, but I wish it was. Oh, this is a little bit thinner bezel because I'm doing a faceted stone, and sometimes I like to use a little bit thinner bezel for that. Not always, but for a little tiny round stone like this, I think it'll be suitable. Scratch here. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder, which comes in sheet form like this, and I use a spray-on flux called My-T-Flux. When you're doing a faceted stone bezel like this, I'm going to create a little step in it in order to have a lip for the pavilion of the stone to rest on. And I do it by making a couple of little jump rings out of 18 gauge wire. Probably, with the exception of making the step bezel for this would be a beginning project. Step bezels aren't too hard to master. If you want a video just about that, then the link right there for you. The shop's getting pretty messy here. I need to clean up. A lot of times I just clean the area that you can see mostly. My torch is a Silversmith torch, which is the name for their air acetylene model. Acetylene air, I should say. So it doesn't matter what order you say it in. It's a good torch. I really like this torch. I use it in size number 1 tip, is another frequently asked question. Unless I'm melting a bunch of metal for a casting or something, then I use a number 3. One of the biggest mistakes I see beginners do when they're making bezels is they leave the heat on the bezel too long after the solder flows, and then it starts to pull apart. So a good rule of thumb is to get in there quick, get it hot, get it to flow, and get out of there before it has a chance to start slumping. I'm just reshaping this into a circle. We can check to see how close we are on the size. I'm pretty good on this one, I think. So, put him back in my little container there and get this cleaned up a bit. Alright, so now I need to put a little bit of a layer of 18 gauge round in here. I think I had a piece laying around. There's a piece. Yeah, and you can use it, you know, around sort of whatever kind of device you use to get a nice circle. I just kind of freehand them usually. If you overlap them like that, then you can kind of size them up or down in order to fit them in there. It's pretty close, though. Usually cut them just slightly too big and then snip out little pieces until it fits perfectly. That way you don't end up with a little gap in there. They're like, this is going to be too big probably. So I'll need to snip a little bit more out of there. Still a bit more. Oops. That one threatened to fly off the table there. Then I'd have to spend 10 minutes on the floor crawling around looking for it. Or just make a new one. If you're already someone who makes jewelry, you know that's one of those things that we spend a lot of time doing, is searching for stones we dropped on the floor. Well, that's pretty good. That went right in there. So that's, and it's snug. There's no, I don't see a little gap or anything. Let's see how that fits in there. These rubies are cut pretty deep, so yeah, I got room to put one more in there, and that should be just about right. If you get tired of the YouTube ads, which I know can be annoying, you could sign up for my Patreon at the $5 a month level. They even let you pay for a full year now, which gives you, I think, an 18% discount or something like that if you pay in advance. So then you can watch my videos with no commercials and support me. There's also a $10 level, and you'll get access to exclusive videos. I put out every 2 weeks an exclusive Patreon video, which they get to vote on. And there's a couple of levels above that, which include some live streaming and things like that. But all the levels get access to my Discord, which is a server where you can post pictures of your work and ask for advice, and you know, get to know some other people who do jewelry stuff too. I'm going to make sure they're sitting down in there. You want to push this top one all the way down to make sure it's resting on the other one. I have some solder from yesterday's project on the pad here still, so I'm just going to make a little pile of 2 or 3 of them here, flux this, and then set this on top of it and heat it from the outside. It should just draw the solder right up in there. I'm going to find a place that's sort of flat on the pad. It doesn't take long with something this small for it to float. One of the things that a lot of people do at first is they either using a torch that's pretty low temperature, like these little butane torches, which you can do some stuff with, or some other torch that doesn't have a lot of oomph to it. I have a little gap there, so I'm going to throw a little bit more solder in there. And they either hold it too far back and spend way too much time trying to bring it up to temperature from too far of a distance, and it just oxidizes everything and makes it hard for the solder to flow. That's a super common problem. People are just a little bit scared of getting the heat too close, but if it takes you more than 30 or 40 seconds to get your solder to flow, you need to stop and think about what's going on. You need to stop and think about what you've done. So we always tell our pets when they've been bad, you need to stop and think about what you've done. The dog seems to take it seriously, the cat's not so much. Alright, so we got a kind of a nice flat bottom now with a little step in it. Set that to the side for the moment. I pre-cut this piece of 12 gauge because I measured it out with a piece of thinner wire that was easier to bend this way without messing up the piece of wire that I'm going to use. But I think I'm going to start by tapering this end down a little bit with the file, kind of thinning it out gradually. Okay, so I need to go. I'm going to use my bail making pliers here to get this going. Just want to curl it back on itself like that. Now it's just going to be some bending to make it match, and then once I get it bent around here, I'll know where to file my notch to make this a sharper bend. So I think what I'll do is I'll use a bigger one of these areas on the bigger one of the cylinders on my bail making pliers here. That's pretty close. I like the more natural curve that I made rather than drew, I think. Let's do that. I'm going to make it slightly more elongated though. That's a little closer to what I wanted. Okay. I just wanted this loop to go a little bit further down. So I think about right there is where I need to file a notch. I really just want a notch there in order to be able to kind of bend it sharply like that. Yeah. And then I think once I solder that, we'll be able to bend that nicely into another little lobe of the heart. I do what's called pick soldering a lot, which is where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this tungsten soldering pick, and then it allows me to heat the piece up to the soldering temperature and place it exactly where I want. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link up there for you. I have a pretty good video about that one. That is one of those skills that I would recommend learning because it makes it so much easier in some situations to get your solder where you want it in the amount that you want it. Oops, I lost my ball. Chad dropped the ball. The original one of these, I wasn't really trying to make a heart. I was just trying to make an abstract shape, and it turned out to look like a heart. So we're going to run with it. We can imagine that I did it deliberately. Okay, so in order to get a nice heart like that and have these two touching where I can solder them together, I'm going to push it a little bit past underneath like that. Let's make sure we got room for our little bezel that's going to go there. Sure, that'll be just fine right in that little crook. All right. So let's push this back just a skosh. That's really kind of what we wanted to do. The only thing that this is a little bit crooked because when you're bending square wire it tries to twist. So I'm going to do a little bit of manually straightening that back out so it's level with the rest of it. If you ever do a version of one of my pieces, which is fine, that's what they're here for, send me a picture on my Instagram. I'd love to see it. It's always fun to see the pieces. Sometimes people do a way better job than I do, and I'm really impressed by it. So it's fun to see that kind of stuff. I'm also going to solder this together so that we don't have a gap there, so it's not catchy. Make sure everything's still sitting how I want it. Okay. Just want to make a cool hairpin too. Just make this, two of these, and then twist this bottom here. I thought that would be kind of nice. Maybe I'll do some of those sometime. I made a great big hairpin for Patreon back when I first started my Patreon. And my wife snapped it up and she wears it like every day to hold her hair kind of in a bun. But she always asked me for, she'd like a pair of smaller ones that are similar. She's not big on hearts, so I probably wouldn't do hearts for her. Although this particular ring that I made a long time ago that we're kind of duplicating here was one of the few that she actually enjoyed the hearts, because it wasn't just a normal everyday heart thing. I think I'm going to get a curve started on this. I don't want it to be perfectly lined up. I want it to come around. At a slight angle. I do that a lot. I start a sentence and then I get lost in my thoughts and I never finish the sentence. So. So square wire is trying to twist on me again. So I'm doing a little manual correcting. I think I'm going to run them past each other like that. That way I can get it shaped around the mandrel, and then size it to the size I want it to be. About a 7.5, that size. Cut that off right there. I'm going to file this to a gentle kind of point so that it fits right in there kind of nicely. Let's do that real quick. If we want it to be pushing against it when we go to solder this, so sometimes if you push it past and then pull it back, you get some forward pressure going on it because of the springiness of the metal. That looks like a good solid solder joint, so let's round it out. That looks pretty good. So, and I want to put that little bezel kind of right there. I want it to stick up high enough to where I have some room to set the stone up above. But it looks like even if I solder it flush with the bottom of that, it should be fine. Alright, so let's solder that in. Looks about right to me. I'm just going to pick a little bit of solder between them and then we should be good. One of the constants of soldering silver is that both pieces need to be up to the 1450 degrees that this solder melts at in order for it to stick to both of them. And you have to kind of consider which thing has how much mass, because this little bezel has a lot less mass than this band, and so it takes a little more heating of the band to get it up to that soldering temperature versus the bezel, which will get there pretty quickly. So you have to kind of focus your heat correctly in order to get things to time it right, and that comes with practice, so keep practicing. Alright, well that looks pretty good. So I'm going to let that pickle for a while and then polish it, and then when we come back I'll set the stone. And then we'll get some better pictures of it, and we'll be done. I went ahead and polished everything up. If you want to, I get asked a lot about why I don't put the polishing into my videos, and that's because I did one a long time ago when I first started about polishing, and there's also one about pre-polishing. So if you go way back to the beginning of my video list, you'll find those two. I'll put a link to the polishing one up here. Alright, so I just so happened, or it came out to be just the right height. If I needed to, I could have filed it down just a little bit, but it looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and set it. Many people use like a bezel pusher and a burnishing tool. I just use the flat side of my needle nose here, and generally push it in. Push it in. Let's see if it's sitting straight. Just need it enough to get over the girdle of the stone. Mostly I was going back and forth a little bit in order to get the stone to, not rock in there. And then we'll go ahead and once we have that pushed down over, we'll do the burnishing stage by rubbing the outer edge with the outside of my pliers. Just a tiny bit, pushing down. Give it a little poke from the bottom. Didn't come out, so I think we're pretty good. I'll give that a little final polish up with my rotary tool and a polishing wheel around the top of the bezel, and then we'll get some pictures. So, all right, be back in a minute. Well, that was a stylized heart ring project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. You also might want to check out my playlist page. It's an easier way to navigate my channel. I've got about 280 videos now, so it's getting to be pretty full of content, and sometimes you want to just work on ring projects. There's a ring project list you could check out, or if you want to do work on your prong setting skills, there's a list of just prong setting projects. So I've organized it in a way so that you can find what you're looking for a little easier. You also might want to give me a subscribe if you're enjoying the content here. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Don't forget to check out the video description down below. There's some important links down there. To be exact. We have a link to my website where I'm having a 20% off Valentine's Day sale right now, so you should check that out. There's a merch store if you want to get yourself a nice one of those notebooks like I showed you, or some other merch. You could visit my Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to help with supplies. I appreciate that. And if you want to check out more information about my Patreon, like I said, it's a really nice place, and there's a link to that down below. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you coming. Take care. Happy silversmithing.